All right. Hello and welcome everyone, and good afternoon. So thank you for joining our free online lesson. All right. My name is Nabil Fikri bin Shaizan and I am an application engineer from Acad system. So for today's topics, for this free online lesson, I would like to share with you about the add-on features for the Inventor, which is nesting utilities. Now, in nesting utilities, you can find available from the product design and manufacturing collection. So if you buy on the Inventor, you will not able to have these nesting capabilities. But if you have this product design and manufacturing collection, if you buy the collection, you will have access to the nesting utilities. Now, to get the nesting utilities, so once you have already installed the Inventors, so what you can do is that you can find on your hidden icon taskbar down here, you should have this Autodesk desktop app. If you look at here, if you buy the product design in manufacturing collection, there are many other tools that are available from you. If you scroll down here, you should be able to see the nesting software is available for you to install. So I already installed mine. So once you have already installed, you should be able to see the icon from there. Now, what this nesting software is all about, this is what we call as a rearranging the patterns. For example, if you have the sheet metal design, sheet metal products, we have involved with many sheet metals, many bands and so on, that you would like to rearrange back your sheet metal shape onto the raw material. Right? So basically the sheet metal band and so on, you want to reopen that, rearrange, and then you will look something like this. The reason why, because we want to do this, is because when we want to cut these patterns using laser cutting or something, so we want to rearrange our shape on our raw material so we don't waste our space. So you will have something like this. Now, so for today's topics, what we like to do is that, let's say we already completed designing our model or our machines using sheet metal design, and that you wanted to transfer into the CAM machinings or other productions, and you wanted to rearrange the pattern. So right here we have these samples, and most likely most of this is created from sheet metals. And what we're going to do is that on the nesting software, it's allow us to rearrange and divide it based on its material and also the thickness for the category. Right, so basically you will have something like on the right side over here. So let's take a look on the Inventors. Now, I believe you should be able to see my screen right here. Right, so you can take a look on my assembly over here, and you can see that most of this is created using the sheet metal design. So you can see, right, so you can see over here, this is actually a sheet metal, but we also have this normal Inventor part file, which is on the cube symbol over here. So this is normal Inventor part files. So let's say if you wanted to import this sheet metal only, so that we can rearrange that on sheet metal plates. So we don't want to include the normal part file as well. Now, part files, you can use that for the nestings, but for this case, we don't want to include that as well. So if you don't want to create the nest, what you can do is that you can open the part files and you can exclude it. Now, let's say what if I decided to move this into the nesting software without excluding the part files. What I can do is that I can right click on the assembly files, and you should be able to see this create nest over here, right? So if you already installed the nesting software, you should have this icon available, and when you go into the home, you should be able to see this nest as well, and you should be able to access your nesting from the creating the new file. You should be able to see at the bottom of the template file as well. Right, so let's say if I'm going to go ahead and create nest from here. And from here, I'm going to drop down and I can select what type of format that I want for my nest. So I can go with inch or millimeters or on default. So let's say I'm going to go with millimeters, and I'm going to go press OK. So what I'm going to do is it's going to import all of my part files from my assembly, and it's going to generalize it, the materials and also the thickness as well. So if I go ahead and press OK, then you should be able to see that right now it's calculating, it's converting into a flat pattern and as well as into a 2D. So you can see there are some error over here because this is not actually a sheet metals, and it's not even a flat object. So let's say if I go ahead and press OK, and you can see that we have some errors over here. So this is not how the original shape actually looks like. If I go into display and the display on the view over here, let's say I'm going to 3D detail. So this is basically how it's originally looked like. So obviously we don't want this to be included inside here. And we also have this object over here that we don't want to exclude. So for that case, let me just close this one. Now I have 3 normal normal part files that I would like to exclude it from the nest. So what I can do is that I can right click and open this file, and over here you can right click and selecting the exclude from nest. So once you exclude from nest, it will not be able to import into the nest file as well. But however, if you have many files over here, so right now we already have some few part files, but if you have hundreds of files which combine together with the sheet metal and normal part files, so it's going to be a tedious work for you to go one by one and exclude it one by one. So what you can do is that instead of you open this one by one to exclude, you can go ahead and create the new nest, open the new nest template over here, and you can go into the manage, and you can go into the provider over here. So this provider allows you to uncheck or check whether some of the items you want to include or exclude. For example, I want DWG, so just make sure it is checked, DWF checked, and so on. But on the Inventor part files, I have some other part files over here. I don't want the normal part file, so I'm going to uncheck all of this, but I'm going to allow for the sheet metal because I only want to import the sheet metal only. All right, so I'm pressing the key. So if I go back over here, what I can do is that I can now export this into this template file. So I'm going to right click and select the create nest, and from here I'm going to select add to open document, and I can select the document that currently be open that I have unchecked non-sheet metal file. So I'm going to click here, press OK, and it should be able to tell you what type of materials and also the thickness has been imported. So you can see we have iron, cast, steels, and some other things. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and it's going to calculate and it's going to import it right over here. So if you take a look over here, some of these items is actually become a flat pattern. So normally this is the for example, we have here. So if I go to the top, if we compare over here, so this is actually an open sheet metal file, which is the flat pattern file. So if you need to make sure this is open, one thing that you needed to do before you export it into the nest is that you must make sure that your sheet metal file has the flat pattern file. So to do that, let's say if I open this file, just make sure you have this flat pattern available from here. Now, if you don't have, normally once you're creating your sheet metal file, this one will not be created manually, sorry, not being created automatically. So you need it to click on this create flat patterns, and only then it will create the flat pattern down here. Now, let's say I'm already done with my model over here, and I'm going to click the flat pattern. So what's going to do is that it's going to open the band file that I have over here. So you can see we have some band, and it's going to open these flanges into a flat pattern, something like this. Right. So once you have this flat pattern available down here, now it is ready. You can just save and close, and then you can right click and send it into the nest. Right. So just make sure you have this flat pattern available, and only then it will open the flat patterns inside the nest software as well. Now we can see you don't have the normal part file right here. Right. So this is what we want. We only want to have a sheet metal file. Now, one thing that you can notice that several of our shape have different colors over here. Now, different colors which allow you to generalize the difference between the materials. Now, you can select if you want to generalize if they have mirror. So basically, everything is the same. Orientation also the same. Source orientation the same, and so on. Right. So the shape, obviously, everything here has different shapes, so it will not have the same colors. But for this case, we're just going to generalize the materials. So we're going to differentiate the materials. However, we have some problem here is that some of these colors look quite similar. So I don't actually know this is look green. This one also look green. So I might mistaken this one as the same material. So for that, you can actually set up the color itself. In order to do that, you can go to the process material library from here. So just click, and it will show you the material list over here. So we have some materials that we create on the sheet metal. So we have some iron cast with the thickness of 2.5. We have some steel 2.5. We have some steel 1.5, and it will be generalized based on the color over here. So the colors is a little bit quite similar. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the color, and I'm drop down and select different type of color from here. Let's say this one is going to be this purple color, and this one is going to be, let's say, cyan. And this one, this material ID, this is the default, which we don't actually use. So I'm just going to leave it as is. But if I'm going ahead and press OK, then you can see it's much easier to know which material, which shape has the same material, and also the thickness of this. Now, before we go and take a look on some other settings, so let's try to create our nest pattern, the nesting studies. So to do that, you can go to the nesting studies, and you can create nest studies from here. Now, once you open these nest studies, there are several other things that you can control from here. From the study itself, you can generalize and set up the name. So I'm just going to leave it as a default. You have the job quantity. You can set it as 1. So basically, it's going to generalize as 1. Let's say I'm just going to go ahead and press OK, and you can see it is now calculating, and it's trying to rearrange the patterns, right? Something like here. So one stock, so you can see, so it has its own size, right? So you can see different shape, but it is now put inside of one stock materials because it is the same materials and also the same size. The same goes with this one. Right. So each item has 1, but what if I want to have more? For example, I needed to have twice. So I can just go ahead and re-edit back. Let's say I want to have 2 of these. So when I press OK, so I should have 2 of these inside over here. So I should have double of the item. So you can see, so I have these 2. I have this is also 2, which is currently being put right over there, and so on. Now, this square box that you see over here, right? So this square box, this is actually the representation of your stock material, which is your the flat patterns, which non-cutting has been done yet, and we're going to we're putting the shape of this rearranged on side of this stock materials before we send this to the machining to create the laser cutting process. Now, what we can see over here, now it's giving us the information, so such as the sheet names, the materials, what type of material has been used from here, the sheet quantities, and the efficiency. It's also giving you the efficiency so that you can see how effective that these items is using on this stock. Right, for example, over here, this is around 50%. This one is, we can see there's still a lot of wasted space, so it's only around 27%. We can see somewhere from here, and there are also some other information from here. Right, and down here, it's giving you which is the items, the flat patterned item over here, so such as the prospectus and so on. So you can find which item goes to which stocks from here. Now, so that is some of these simple ways for you to create the nest. So let me just delete this one. Now, if I go back to my nest studies, I can also go into the shape. So if you needed to change some shape from here, if you needed to exclude some of the item, maybe I don't want this source one to be included as well. So I can just uncheck this one and it will not be included inside of nest studies. So I have this packaging, so not much that we can do from here, but you can still set up your package, but on the other area. And then we have these global parameters. Here is where you can set up which is the sheet metal pattern has been shown, whether on the bottom left, right, or upper right. So you can set up from here. And then we have this calculation time. Now, if you want it to be fast, so you can just reduce the time from here, but the result might not be very good compared to the current that we have from here. So if you wanted to give it more time to calculate, so you can just increase the time from here. We also have this desired yield, which you can input your value from here, and some random option that you can change. But for now, we're just going to leave this as a default. Now let's take a look on some other settings. So let me just click OK first. All right, so let's just create some sample first. All right, so they're also giving you the size of the stock materials. You can see this one is around 2000 millimeters with 1000 millimeters height and 2000 millimeters length. So the same goes with this one, and it's also telling you how much that has been used from here. So you can see it's also giving you the roughly how much that this actually used for it. So you can recalculate back later on and reset about the appropriate stock size. Now, this is the stock size that I have. So let's say if you needed to create different type of stock size. So for that, I can go into the process material library again. So instead of going to the materials, so you can go to the packaging from here. Now this packaging, you can see it is actually showing you what you see over here, the materials, the thickness. But additionally, it is meant for you to change the length and the width of these patterns. So currently we have the iron cast around 2000 length and 1000 width. Let's say if I needed to make it a little bit bigger for the iron cast. So I'm going to go ahead with around 3000 and the width with around 2000 something. Right. So let's go make it a little bit bigger for this one. And then if I take a look right over here, so this item is actually quite small, some of this. So maybe I need it, maybe I want to reduce some more. So I can just reduce directly from here. So let's give it around, let's reduce it into 1.5, oops, 0.5. And the height, so I'm going to give it around, let's say 800. So once I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and I can create a new studies, and then we can compare between these studies from here. So I have created the new studies. Now it's calculating. And you can see this is the new stock that I have. Now comparing to this one, so this one, it needs to move the other shape to the next stock because the stock size is not enough size for the first one, so moving this one to the second stock. Unlike this one, so since this one, the stock is a little bit bigger, so it can compile all of the shape inside of this one stock. Right, so that is how you can manage and create your own stock. Now, let's say, what if I wanted to import another sheet metal file? For example, if I take a look over here, so we still have some more space, and same goes with this one. So there are some hole over here. Let's say if I want to include some items inside over here as well. For that, I can go ahead and to the source, and I can find the source file, and I can include some other sheet metal file over here as well. Right. So you should be able to do that normally with sheet metal. But what if you have a file which is created using the Autocad? So I have this shape over here created inside of Autocad. The same goes with this one. And I want this pattern to be included inside of the nest as well. Right. So you can do that by using this source. And then you can find, this is the AutoCAD file that I have created before. So I have two from here. So we just click both. And when I include this one, then you can see it is now been added. And then when I press OK, you should be able to see on the right. So let me just see. Okay. So the material ID is basically 1, which is the default one. So let's say if I wanted this material ID to have the same weight, let's say this one, let me check back on this steel 2.5. So what I can do is that I can go into my source and I can find which is the item that I want. Right. So usually you should have shown you from here. For some reason it does not show. Let me just check back. Right, so I want this to be a steel 2.5. That's okay. And it's not shown. Let me just see. Okay, so it is now shown on 2D because it is not actually 3D. Right, so you can see from here. Now this is, I already select this one with the same material with this one. So if I create a new one, so let me just delete this and create a new one. Let me just delete this one as well. And I'm going to recreate a new studies. And then you can find, right, so you can find that we now have this one included here as well. Now, this one is only 2, but what if I needed to multiply this one, right? So you should have no problem with that. You can directly edit from here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. It's going to highlight this one. And I can go to the nest and I can go into the property. So this is where I can actually edit the quantities manually from here. Now, this is normal. I can select this one. Now, if you go into the, let's say, if I go into the shape, so you can see that we have some other things that we can do from here. I can also rotate some of the parts. For example, if I needed this to be rotated into 45 degrees. So what I can do is that I can find back the items, so which I believe this one, and I can just uncheck the bind. So the bind is the item that ensure that nothing has been changed. So I can uncheck this one, and I'm going to go into the orientation. Let's say I'm going to go with 45. And I also don't want it to be 2. I want it to be more than 2. Let's go ahead and let's say I'm going to go with 12. And I press OK. And here I can recalculate back, and it's going to give me some more. And it's also going to rotate something like here. Now, if I don't want, so I can just go back and make sure it's not rotated into 45. Let me just edit back on the properties. Shape, and I don't want this to be rotated, so let me just turn off the bind. And okay, so it's recalculate, and it should have something like this. So much more compact, and the efficiency now increase some more. Now, another thing that we can do is that if we take a look on our sheet metal, so it has some gap over here and also have some gap from the raw materials from here. What if I wanted to control this one? Again, you can go back to the same settings. I believe this one. Oops, not this one. This one. Okay, I can go ahead and go back to the properties, and I can go to the global parameter from here. So I have this one, which is the same that you can do before, which you can adjust the times. But the new thing that I have is this override material parameter. For example, if I wanted to click the separation, so for example, if I needed to give it the frame width, basically means the original item and the frame. So if I go around and give it some more, it's going to increase some more. And I want this to be much more closer. So I can go into the item separation. So it's going to give the item less distance between each other. So I'm going to go ahead and okay. It's going to recalculate, and you can see the new one, it is much closer. And the gap between this and the outside raw material is now increased somewhat. Now, this is where we create the same. What if we import it inside from AutoCAD and we want to have different type of, for example, right here, I have this one, which is using the default materials. I don't want to have the default. I want to create a new one. So I can go ahead on the process materials, and I can select for adding. Right, so I can select add, but if I simply just add, so the material is quite limited from here. So let me just delete this. So instead of creating the add, I'm going to select add from provider. So with this, I have much more material that I can choose from. Or maybe I want to have copper. So I'm selecting the copper, and I have these copper materials. I'm going to give it a TLX around, let's say around 1 only. 1 millimeters. And I can go back to my source and check back the item from here. So I believe this is the one that I want to create to select. So I'm selecting the copper, so it's going to have a copper materials. So if I regenerate, it's going to give it a new materials for the copper. So let me just try to calculate back. And if the calculation does not correct, I may need to recreate the nest types. So, but let's just see. Right, so we can see it is now copper item over here. Now let's say you already done with creating the nest, rearrange the nest and so on. Let's say if you want to see the report from here, so what you can do is that you can just click over here, and you can find from here, it's going to highlight what type of sheet that you have, and then you have this report over here. So just click on the report, and it's going to give it the report on HTML, which you can print out into the PDF or somewhere. So we have some other information from here. You can select, and then you can see the report created right over here. Right. So, but this is just a report. What if you want to export it out into a other CAD format, which you can use to send it into manufacturing, which you can use to creating the post-process cutting path. So what you can do here is that you can right-click on here. So right-click, and then you can click either export or create the 3D model. So if you needed to export this one into the AutoCAD, you can click export, and then you can just select and save. So I'm gonna go and save this name as sheet 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and save and press OK. And then when I open my AutoCAD, so I can open the sheet 1 that I have saved before, I believe on the document. It is saved as a DXF. So selecting DXF. So I have sheet 1. And when I open this one, it's going to give me the item from here, right? So this is the item that we have created before from the AutoCAD, from the Inventor Nesting. So we have imported right over here. Now, what if we wanted to export this into the CAM software, which is currently inside of Inventor? So what you can do is right click and select create 3D model instead. So you can click 3D model and it's going to creating back the normal 3D model that you can see from here. Then you can see it is now inside of SMD, and it is actually a 3D model. You can see some of these sheet metals. So once you already have the, you can just go into the CAM software to creating the cutting path, the CNC cutting path from here. But just go into the setups, and so I'm gonna go ahead and selecting the cutting, and the stock size will be from solid, which is this one. Now we have our stock created, and I can go ahead and selecting the cutting path, and I can select which is the item that I want to cut from here. So say just that is just it. So I'm gonna go ahead and press OK. And right now I can go and simulate, and I can simulate the cutting path from here. So you can see it is now creating the cutting path using the laser cutting. So all of these paths you can generate the post-process G code by using this process. Just find your correct machine process, the setups and so on, and you should be able to generate as a correct G code. Now that is basically all that I would like to share with you about the Nest software. So if you have any question, you can just feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself. So I'm going to stay around a few more minutes before I end the session. If you have any question, you can just simply unmute yourself or type it on the chat. All right, so I believe no questions so far. So thank you, Muhammad Zam, for joining our free lesson. And I hope I can see you guys again on our next free lesson. So thank you very much for joining. Have a nice day and goodbye.